real conversation, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional.
All right, welcome everyone. Nathan with you again. And today we got a very special guest. Everybody knows him, I think, is Stephan Vachon-Zee. And give you a little bit of background on him if you're one of the few people who don't know him yet. He's been in law enforcement for over 16 years. He's worked in areas such as patrol through several divisions within the city of Edmonton. He's been in Beats Unit, Training Section, Gang Suppression, and is currently assigned as the patrol sergeant for one of the squads in Northeast Division. Z has focused his career in the realm of crowd management and control, where he's the training sergeant and lead training coordinator, as well as the tactical advisor for the EPS's public safety unit. And Vachon-Zee also works in the private sector, where he's a tactics instructor and specialty training coordinator with Canadian Innovative Protective Solutions Incorporated. So welcome, Z.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll start where we start with most people and tell us about baby Z.
Yeah. So I am born and raised in Edmonton and the area. I was actually born at the Royal Alec Hospital, and I grew up in the North End, in Castle Downs, actually. Stayed there till I was about 5, and then my parents ended up splitting up. So when they split up, my dad stayed in North Edmonton. My mom ended up meeting a guy, getting remarried. We all moved to St. Albert. And then I spent the rest of my childhood in St. Albert and in Sturgeon County, so just north of St. Albert. I could draw you a really big, cool picture of my family tree because it's a lot of branches. But so my dad ended up remarrying, stayed in Edmonton. So I have a half sister from that. I have a half brother from my mom and my stepfather. But yeah, I spent all my formative years here in town. Went to school in St. Albert. Was not a very good student. I got myself in some trouble. And funny enough, so my father was in the military. He was or has worked for the government, just recently retired, actually. So he worked for Solicitor General, CAPS, then the sheriffs. My stepfather was a career police officer. His brother was a career police officer. My aunt married a police officer who was a career police officer. So, and my grandfather was in the Air Force. So when I was 12, I joined Air Cadets in St. Albert. Didn't really like it. Went to Army Cadets in Edmonton. So when I was growing up, like I said, I was kind of a rambunctious kid. So I got myself in some trouble in school. Not big trouble, but enough that my parents were being driven crazy. And then Old Bunny Doon at Edmonton turned into Vimy Ridge Academy, which at the time was a Canadian Studies cadet program. So my parents were kind of at their wits' end and went, okay, whatever. We're going to send you to this school. Can't get any worse, so hopefully it gets better. And, luckily for me, I took to the discipline on the cadet side, and I took to the discipline going to that school, and things got a lot better for me. So I ended up teaching a bunch of courses in high school on survival and different things like that. And then on the cadet side, I rose to the rank of the cadet chief warrant officer, and then was the regimental sergeant major of my cadet corps. So there was a lot of leadership opportunities given to me very early. And then I had a lot of mentors in the military, in the cadet program, teachers at the school I went to at Vimy Ridge, which kind of directed my path another way, which was really good. So I, at the ripe old age of 18, funny enough, I was going to join the military. That was my goal. It's what I always kind of wanted to do, if not to be a police officer later on. And my mom came to me one day and she's like, here, this is a package for Grant McEwen. I filled it out for you. You're going to put it in. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I looked and it's police studies. So I'm like, oh, okay, what hurt could it do? Well, I got in. And so I said, okay, I'll go do this college thing. I've never really liked school, but I did it. And then I actually did quite well at it.
What was your best subject when you were in school?
So in high school, it was social studies. I love history. Like, love it. I still to this day, like, I'm a big nerd for reading, so I read a lot of history books. And then in school, sociology. And then what was the other one that I did? I mean, in Grand Mac, there was a lot of police-centric courses that we took. So I did well at those because I was interested. But I really like sociology, actually. I didn't really like my teacher in college, but I enjoyed the subject. And then because I went to college very young, I was hired at Kingsway Security. And I worked there for, I want to say about 9 months. And then...
This is the old Kingsway.
The old Kingsway, yeah.
With the bus terminal.
With the bus terminal, yeah. No, it was actually a really good place to work. It was quite busy.
Yeah.
And then I took my very first PPCT, so control tactics course, taught by Mark Bloxham, who later became a boss and a friend. And well, I mean, we'll get into that. But at the end of the course, he looked at me and he's like, "Hey, how would you like to work somewhere else that you get a little bit more experience?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, where would that be?" And he says, "Well, West Edmonton Mall has their own security program." And I knew about it, but he's like, "I'm going to reach out to their boss and we'll see what we can do to get you an interview." So he did that. I got an interview, and a couple months later, I was working at West Ed part-time. And I finished college, stayed at West Ed. And it's interesting. My last year of college, I really didn't care about college per se. I was so immersed in working at West Edmonton Mall because great experience, great. Like, we worked in squads. It was, and everybody says it was like the farm team to go to the police service.
Yeah.
I still have friendships from there that have carried on for almost 20 years now. So I worked there from part-time to full-time, became a sergeant at, again, the ripe old age of 21, in charge of a bunch of people at the mall. And then I was able to get hired as a police officer. First police officer or first agency that hired me was the Camrose Police Service. And I can't remember how I heard about them. But I had, I think it was through a friend of mine but anyway, I applied, and they were trained at the time and I think still are by the Edmonton Police Service.
What year would this have been?
2006.
Did you apply anywhere else?
Applied to Edmonton. So I applied to Edmonton first. And, now looking back in hindsight, I mean, I get it. They had told me, they're like, "You're a good applicant, but you're too young." Like, I think I applied at 19. And so they said, "You need to go and do a couple more things or just get a little bit of experience." Excuse me. And I waited probably a year, and then I applied to Camrose because I thought, well, maybe that could be the experience that I need to get and go work there. And then I was hired there. So I was hired by them. I started class in August, of 2006. And then I worked in Camrose for 18 months, maybe just over, and then came back to Edmonton as an experienced officer. And
you can see a lot in 18 months on this job.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
I agree.
You probably have more experience in a lot of aspects than most people in their life.
Yeah. And you know what, working in Camrose is very, it was really good. I mean, it's not as busy as Edmonton, obviously. It's quite a bit smaller. Different demographics, different dynamics in the police service, but certainly you do a lot more because there's not as much support. It's just you guys, right? Like they have some clerical staff, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of processes and things I learned to do there that I never would have learned here in Edmonton. So
one of the things I would think is it gives you more of an appreciation for the people behind the scenes because I forget the number they said here, but if you're a constable in Edmonton, it's something like 7 people as support staff to make you a functional constable on the street.
Yes.
So,
yeah, and there at the time, I don't think it's much bigger now, but we would have stenos that would do certain things, but there was only 1 or 2 working at a time. So in a lot of the files, like there was a lot of impaired, a lot of drug work at the time that I was there, but you were relied upon to do the lion's share of that work because we didn't want to overburden the 2 people doing that work, and they only have so much time. So I would suggest there was 1 support staff or maybe 3 constables there. So the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So,
and they're not there 24 hours.
And they're not there 24 hours. No, just during the day. So
So what else was Camrose like? Did you live there while you were out there?
Yeah. So when I first went there, I actually lived with, so I had a girl I went to college with. She was hired there in the class before me. She's now an Edmonton member as well. But I lived in her basement with the house was owned by her and her husband. And then about 6 months into that, my current wife and I started dating just after I started recruit class. And we decided, well, let's try living together. Well, she had worked in Edmonton, so I was like, well, I'll move back to Edmonton and I'll just commute. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up living downtown in Edmonton. And then another member in Camrose, who's also an EPS member now, he was in it was a squad, but we called them platoons. So he lived in Edmonton as well, so we carpooled.
Wow.
So we did that for about 6-7 months maybe. And then the way it worked in Camrose, again at the time, is that every year they would mix up the platoons. So people would get moved around. Mm. And so unfortunately, him and I got split up. And then so that's kind of one of the points where I was like, okay, I can't continue this. Like this, it's not a grand scheme of things. You look at big agencies like Toronto and Vancouver, like some people commute an hour and a half one way every day.
Yeah.
Camrose was about an hour on a bad day, but it was too much for me. I was like, I don't want to live like this. So that was kind of one of the catalysts for me trying to get back to Edmonton, which I always wanted to come back to Edmonton. And I think for how young I was and what I wanted to do, I wanted to be busy and I wanted to learn fast. Mm. And Camrose was a good place to work. It's just not the place to do that.
Yeah.
So great place to raise a family. And still to this day, it's a very nice city, but a very, very slow pace based on how many people live there.
Well, and then when you come back to Edmonton, what year were you here then when you came through for the experience class?
So I was in class again in the experienced officer program in March of 2008.
2008. Okay. So what was training like for you?
So the experienced officer class was only about 8 days for us. So in my experienced officer class, there was 4 of us. One, I still believe, is the only military policeman that's gone through it. He just had a bunch of courses and training that EPS had offered him, so he was allowed to walk through that program. One was an ex-RCMP member, but was really, really good. And then the other 2 of us were actually in the same recruit class in Edmonton. And then he went back home to PI and then didn't like it, so came back again. And then I came back. So we had already been trained less than 2 years before that.
Okay.
So our program was quite fast. It was just get us sworn in, get our equipment, do some training, like qualification training. And then once we were done that, they were like, hey, you guys want to go for lunch? Like,
yeah.
We spent a lot of coffees.
They don't need to waste all the money again, right? And considering Camrose trained here, you've done it all. Now it's re-qual on whatever tools they have here.
So, and I mean, in a small class like that, there's only 4 of us. So you can, as an instructor, you can easily spend a lot more time dealing with anything you need to deal with, which there wasn't. So we were just allowed to move on.
So since you've been back here, what's Edmonton like?
So, Edmonton is Edmonton. It is my home, and I grew up here. We are raising our family here. When I was in the EOP program, so just like when you're in recruit class, they ask you what divisions you want to go to. Mm. And I thought to myself, like, okay, Camrose wasn't that busy, so let's try and just like dip my toe into it. So I put Southeast. And I'll never forget this. One of the senior constables that was teaching us pulls me aside and he's like, listen, you're not going to Southeast. We're going to put you downtown. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So like the next week I'm in downtown division. But I always laugh. I'm like, I came here because I wanted fast paced. I wanted experience. I wanted to see everything I could in policing to grow and learn. And I got exactly what I wished for.
Yeah.
Like it was a very, very, I stepped into downtown when it was, it's always been very busy, but it was certainly very busy then. And then we kind of hit a lull. And then we hit that like 2011 year where homicide spiked. Like it was crazy stuff to see and experience, but really, really good for foundational learning. And
it was a bigger division back then too. So this is before we've had multiple boundary reassignments, but downtown used to be twice the size. And even when I got here, it was big. And yeah, you would come in and it's 50 calls deep and you could take 10 yourself, just you, and then each person on your squad, and you'd still leave with 50 calls on the board.
It's one of the things, when I talk to my members now, and, it's gotten a lot better in the last couple months, but when I first got promoted, like it was back up to, you log on, there's 40 calls waiting for you and everybody gets overwhelmed. And I said, I'm like, we'll deal with this, but I bring that up. I'm like, I worked in downtown at a time where it was 50, sometimes 60 calls.
Yeah.
It was just crazy. And you just dealt with it. You buckled down, did your thing. And, but, going there was very good. I'm glad I did it. I think downtown working there has a shelf life. But I certainly did enjoy going there, and I had a very good squad. Was treated very well. Like it was a good place to work.
So what were kind of some of your memorable experiences down there?
You know what? When it comes to, I'll talk about the people first. I'll talk about the calls after. But for people, so my squad was a very, very tight-knit squad. It was a little while ago, so it was a lot harder to be accepted into the crew. But lots of social events together. Like we socialized probably every day.
Mm-hmm.
On days off, I would say half the days off, some of us, like we were always together. And not that that's unique, because that still happens with a lot of groups. But again, for a young man getting into the job, trying to be accepted and be a part of this team and this lifestyle and this family. And it was a very good place to work. I had very good sergeants. I actually had 2 sergeants in my first squad, because one ended up moving, another one came in, polar opposite in the way that they did things and their personalities, but were very good to me. Downtown division at the time, and I think still to this day, it's so busy. And I know, you worked there quite a long time too, because it's so busy and it can be so dangerous and so volatile. It brings everybody together a lot faster, and the relationships are a lot tighter. So, I'm very thankful for going there. Like I said, there's a shelf life, and then eventually you have to go do other things. But I really enjoyed that. When you talk about experiences, like I had many. When you talk about calls, like I was one of the first ones. I don't know if you remember Papyrus. There was that was a big thing after. That was a string of Somali community shootings, and I was one of the first ones through the door at that one. There was a lot of high risk incidents that I ended up going to with that crew, being the first people through the door, being the first people on scene there. But I'd have to sit down and write a book. Like there's so many that we went to. But really, again, the biggest thing, like I always tell guys when we'll sit down and chat, it's like, if you were to sit down and go through all the experiences of the operational things you've seen, there's lots, and it fades off in the background, you bring it back up. But I really, really enjoyed the I guess for lack of a better term, community of downtown. And I don't think it's changed. Certainly there's small changes throughout the years, but that was what I enjoyed the best about being there. We would always have squad breakfasts and go up in the lounge and eat, and we would always spend time after. Like there was a lot of opportunity to really form your teams, and the teams that were already formed to be able to keep that closeness.
I think that's one of the things that might actually be missing more nowadays, is a lot of that camaraderie. And people don't realize, like, as a young person on this job, that camaraderie, like you said, you bring people into the fold quicker. You know that they have your back. That when you go out and you get into the thick of things, that people have your back, and it's about safety. I think a lot of that's missing now, and you certainly see it in, just internal issues or complaints that people have. So, and also people don't have the ability to talk to one another. So that also is missing to some extent. But yeah, downtown, my experience when I was coming through was similar to that. I had a much more experienced crew. I think everybody on there was like 7 years to 10 years. Mm-hmm. it wasn't, now it's, guys got 2 or 3 years and you're the senior guy and you're training all the new guys. Like that's a lot of stuff to take on right at the beginning, but good on you for it. But yeah, we had much more experienced people and they expected things of you. And it was just a different environment. Yep. So, what have you done since? So you were downtown, and where'd you kind of go from there?
So I started, my career in downtown. I was a constable in patrol for just under 2 years. And then I had an opportunity through a friend of mine to work what's called the Neighborhood Empowerment Team. And at the time, I had never heard of that before. So I didn't know what that was. And so I went and spoke to them. And the Neighborhood Empowerment Team has had different, not variations, but it's kind of changed a little bit throughout the years. And of course, there's different missions that they'll have them do. And I guess for lack of a better term. But when I went there, they said, hey, we'd like you to work with our partner here who works for the city, who was a social worker, amongst other things. He was a very, very smart man. And they said, hey, we'd like to have somebody that has a very street-centric approach to policing. Like, we'd like you to help out with, and at the time, it was the issue of a lot of weapons, like edge weapons, on that strip of 118 Ave, which is where I was looking to go. And then the sale of drug paraphernalia for the use of drugs, right? Because that was obviously a big issue and still is. So I accepted it and I worked for about 9 months. And it actually was a very good job. I find, and I'll talk about Beats when I went there too, but jobs like the Net and Beats, it allows you to see a different perspective. I really like patrol and I respect every member that does patrol. And I think patrol is very important. But of course, in patrol, you go to these calls and you never see these people again, or you're just dealing with the same people that you see all the time.
You're the Band-Aid. Exactly.
Yeah. Where you go to Beats and Net and all these places, you are actually proactively trying to deal with problems. And not only that, but you're, whether it's good guys, bad guys, whatever, you're seeing them in a different light. Because I'm a firm believer, good people can do bad things, bad people can do very good things. And I mean, that's a big generality, but you get to see all sides.
Mm-hmm.
And you build relationships, and it makes you at the end of the day go, okay, I actually did something today that might have some long-lasting effect. The issue with working there for me was I really missed being in a squad.
Yeah.
And I was still very young and still very new on the job. So I actually went and left that to go back to patrol. And my partner, Chris, that worked for the city, I think he's a boss with the city now, exceptionally smart man, did a fantastic job. We worked, we believe in 118 was one of our projects where we were trying to stop the sale of edge weapons and drug paraphernalia to kind of the communities around there. I mean, the biggest thing was to the vulnerable people is who they were selling it to, and that caused a bunch of issues. But he continued with that. I went back to work with a squad. Spent another couple of years doing that. And then I applied twice to Beats. First time I didn't get it. Second time, my sergeant, and this has stayed with me for the rest of my career, helped me interview and had me create a resume that I've kept ever since, which allowed me to be successful in the Beat program. So I worked Beats. And then actually not long after I got into Beats, and I had never, again, in hindsight, I look back to my cadet time and I did a lot of training and instruction in cadets, but I never thought that I would do that in policing. Policing, because I'm young, I just want to be out in the street, going to do my thing, having fun, putting bad guys in jail, do whatever. And then all of a sudden an opportunity came up to go help out some training stuff. So I went and did that a couple of times. A couple bosses came to me and said, hey, you're pretty good at this. Have you ever thought about applying for a secondment we have coming up with our tactics training and training section? And I said, no, but okay, I'll give it a try. Applied, got it. Did 6 months on a secondment. Ended up getting hired full-time after that because I'd gone back to the beat for a few months, got hired, went and did that. Had to leave that position a little bit early. And then after I left training, I went to Northwest Division. And I would have gone back to DDiv, but the only reason I went to Northwest is because that's when they did the split. So they had taken not all, but a bunch of members from downtown, put them in Northwest. It happened that my old squad was taken out of downtown and went Northwest. Yeah. And so that's why I went to that squad. Then once I spent a year there, and then hospitality policing unit position opened up. So Ryan was building that team, and
You're gonna make a lot of people mad saying that.
yeah,
name.
no, I know. It's okay.
Terrible
I hate
acronym.
that. I hate that name more than anybody else. So.
I was gonna throw it into your bio, but I was like, I won't cut you at the knees right at the beginning.
Yeah, I just have everybody listening. When they gave me my plaque for gang suppression, I asked them, like, can you please not put HBU in there? And they put it in there anyway. So.
Yeah.
And of course, I was lucky enough to get hired for HBU that became gang suppression and did 4 years. So you talk about places I never thought I'd work. I never thought I would do work like that, like gang suppression stuff. It was never even on my radar. And I'm a guy who moves around. A lot of it is because I want new challenges. I get bored. 4 years is the most I've ever spent in any full-time unit. And I loved it. Like gang suppression, where like that type of work is good, valuable work. And I really enjoyed it. And then from there, I went to Southwest for a year with the intention of trying to apply for promotion, and was promoted and got promoted where I am now in Northeast Division. And then, of course, through 9 years of that time, I've been a member of our public safety unit. And in that public safety realm, I've gone from crowd management member, so just a line member, all the way up to now where I'm the training sergeant, a tactical advisor, and one of the leads of that program, and also one of the supervisors for our munitions side.
Okay. So when did you get into PSU? Do you remember?
2014.
What was if you could kind of run us through what's some of the training that you went through, and then maybe if it's changed for the guys now, what that training kind of looks like, just so even the public has an idea of, hey, these are the people who show up when there's all the protests and stuff going on. This is kind of the things we put them through and what they're there for.
So, traditionally the public safety units were riot troops. So back I think most of them were formed in the 70s. They were called riot troops. They were for riots. And it was kind of a very basic, you give them a shield, you give them batons, give them helmets, probably some coveralls, and they march around. And your job is to stop riots, I guess kind of prevent riots, but not really. But it was a very basic, generalized training in terms. And of course, throughout the years, it developed like everything else. So when I stepped into the public safety unit, so there's a course that's run. It's called a 40-hour course. And that 40-hour course runs the gambit from basic knowledge, our equipment, line movements. And so in that regard, very similar to the military in that just the marching and the choreographed movements, I guess you could say choreographed, but very controlled. Part of that is also, it's a very command-driven unit. So in policing, our members are given a lot of sway in their decision-making. Like you go to a call with you or your partner, sometimes by yourself, you have to make those decisions. And yes, you can phone your sergeant or maybe have them show up, but at the end of the day, the vast majority lie with you. In the public safety unit, it doesn't work like that. Everything that we do is command-driven. So the commanders are going to make those calls. They're going to do it with a lot of input. However, there's a reason for that. So when I stepped into this world, I didn't know any of that. I wanted to do it because I had heard it was a good team atmosphere. You get to know a lot of people throughout the service. You get to see a lot of different ideas, new faces. And to be fair, when I stepped in, and for a long time, the city of Edmonton we don't have a lot of unrest. Like the only things that I can remember, 2001, we had the Canada Day. They call it riots, but it really wasn't. A lot of unlawful stuff, but I mean, not riots like you see in other places in the world.
Yeah.
And then 2006 during the playoff run, where, I mean, there was a lot that happened there and it wasn't good. But again, to say it was a full-blown riot, I don't think so. And but that's what the city had seen. So it was more like a party unrest, or sports related, or not political activism, not things again that you might see in other places in the world. So when I joined, good program, but we also saw a change in the unit. So one of our long-term sergeants and acting staff sergeants that had ran the unit retired, and there was nobody up behind him to kind of take over that spot. So people that did step in certainly didn't have the experience that he had. So we kind of had this period where, sometimes things didn't go as smooth. And anyway, we just had some hills to climb. And as I progressed, I was lucky that I think within a year, I had applied for and was accepted into our munitions program. So our special munitions and chemicals. And so what that is that's the members in the unit that have all of our specialty equipment when it comes to running from impact weapon systems all the way to if we ever had to deliver CS gas or anything like that. So a lot of training, another course, so another week-long course you'd have to take to even qualify. Plus, as you get into these specialty units, every year you have to do more and more and more training to keep qualified. And it's usually twice a year at least. And then that's away from what the unit has to train. So I continued in, I think it was 2017. In training, I got a variety of experiences training, but even when I left training, I was still helping teach a bunch of things throughout the service. So one of the things that I've been very good at in my career is coordination of scenarios and building training like that, because I really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. So I'd gone to a couple of the bosses and said, hey, we're having some issues with just some of the coordination stuff. And I said, I think it's just because some of the people that are doing it don't have the experience in creating this and coordinating this. So the two big bosses at the time said, yeah, we'd love to have you come in and help. So that very quickly went from me helping to I took over that program less than a year later when it comes to training coordination of all the training in the unit. Shortly after that, I was put on what's called a tactical advisor course. So myself and a few others were put on a course that we were trained by ex-police officers from the UK. So we're technically internationally certified tactical advisors. And, the tactical advising part is, I could spend another 2 hours on that topic, but essentially what it is you are assisting the commanders in making their decisions. So you have to be well-versed in law, you have to be well-versed in tactics, you have to be well-versed in the capabilities of the unit, because our commanders were all part-time, so they might not understand all that. And you have to be able to deliver advice with the positives and negatives to each option, try and get your commander to be able to pick the best option, but you're not the commander. So it's not your job to make the decision. You just have to help point them down the right path. And you might not always get it perfect, but that's
kind of like, here you go.
Yep. This is, you can do this,
luck.
you can do this, you can do this. Here's the positives and negatives to each. And then we talk about it and you kind of move forward.
Are they sending you away for that kind of training, or they bring all these guys in?
So they bring them here. For that, they brought them here, I should say. We have sent members away on training, certainly. It just COVID kind of put a snap on that as well, right? So, and this was just before COVID. And then from there, I was a tactical advisor for some small deployments, like some of the stuff we do, like New Year's, and but then of course, Black Lives Matter. George Floyd happened. Black Lives Matter came to be. The convoy protests. We essentially went from Edmonton doesn't have a lot of this stuff to we have everything that everybody else does. And so what that did as a tactical advisor is I got a ton of operational experience doing that job. I got a ton of operational experience being a munitions guy. So we went from, no experience you get in Edmonton or very little to all of a sudden it's like every couple of weeks we're doing something. And the way that it worked out, and just by attrition, myself and one of the other bosses in the unit, we ended up doing exclusively every one of these things. So we had hired 10 and only 2 of us were left doing operational deployments.
Oh,
and
really?
that's for a variety of reasons. Like people had personal stuff, they had work stuff, they had to step away. Some just couldn't do it. I mean, we had one very senior member that was in one of our disruption teams as those were formed. Like it's very difficult to be a part of our public safety side when you're in those units because we deploy on the same stuff. Yeah. So not his fault at all. But anyway, it just ended up that myself and I'll say his name, Mike Hickey. Anyway, we ended up doing all of these deployments. So we got very experienced in doing that, which is good, but it's also, it shouldn't be like that. But anyway.
Well, yeah, and I was looking at a stat. There was an article today in the Edmonton Journal just talking about the total amount of overtime spent on, I want to say it was on protests from last year. And then the spokesperson for the EPS was talking about, well, this is how many protests we go to and COVID affected the numbers and stuff. But they showed a graph in there, and I think it was from 2019 through to this year, like the number of protests go up by the hundreds.
Yep.
And I think last year we had something like, or sorry, not last year, but the year before, it was something like 400. It was over 400. So it's like multiple protests a week. And I know just from being on the public safety unit, like the amount of call outs and standbys and things that come up, it was a hell of a lot.
You know, it's interesting. And we have certain people in town and certain lawyers in town that take pokes at the unit. And, but the reality of it is they don't really know what they're talking about because they don't know what we do. But the public safety unit is called that for a reason. We are no longer a riot troop.
Yeah.
Like we do, like when we run our courses, and so we have a new course coming up in March too. And every time I'm in front of these new candidates, I say, we are a crowd management team. Our job is to proactively prevent this stuff from happening if we can. And the convoy protest was interesting, and it's garnered a lot of political attention and a lot of attention from both sides. And to be fair, it's the first time in my career, like I'm not a very political person, and I'm purposely not a political person because there's certain things on each side that I'm like, okay, I can see the validity in that, and there's other things where I'm like, everybody's equally as crazy with some stuff, and some of the extremism, I'm like, oh, it's just anyway. But what we saw in the freedom convoys is that both sides of the spectrum were incredibly mad at the police. One side was mad because they felt that we were taking their freedoms away or whatever, and in regards to vaccinations and all, and a lot of it was stuff that we had no control over at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side just doesn't like us because they think that we're,
placating to the other
exactly,
side,
and should be defunded and all that stuff. So it was the first time in my career where I sat there and I'm like, wow, like we are on an island by ourselves. But while doing these deployments, for one, I think the public safety unit did an exemplary job. And I think there was a lot of things done that might not have been popular with certain groups, but it prevented people from getting hurt.
Yeah.
It prevented fights. Really, public safety unit, that is our job. We are there for public safety, and we accomplished that, even if people aren't happy that we didn't do other things. Or, from a tactical advisor position too, you sit there, and I know one of the things that everybody's mad about is the injunction. And, we had talked about, the ability for us to enforce certain things without starting a confrontation that can lead to even bigger confrontations. And I think the lack of understanding of, hey, if I do A, it can lead to B, C, D, and then all of a sudden we have caused not a riot, but an unrest. And I'm like, we have to, there's all these things that it's a lengthy process to think about this stuff. And sometimes you're like, okay, well, some people aren't going to be happy about this, but if it's to keep people physically safe, we're going to do it.
Well, I think the unit allows a lot of things to happen. So we stand out there, and it's like, hey, this group wants to protest this, so go ahead. And then the counter group shows up, and they want to protest the opposite and yell at, both are yelling back and forth. It's like, go ahead. That's your right. We stand in the middle and basically just get crapped on by both sides. So you're facing one side and they're screaming at you. You're like, all right, I'll turn to this side, and they turn over and it's like, oh, that person's yelling at me too. It's like, well, sure takes a lot, takes a very good person to stand in the middle and take all that. But I think they allow, I don't want to say allow things to happen because, it's your right, but we're there to make sure everybody can express themselves legally and lawfully.
Yes.
But even with your rights, there are limits. You can't infringe on other people's rights to a degree. So, I think people lose sight of that when it came to a lot of this. And just everything's been a protest lately.
It has, yes.
So people have been losing their minds about every single thing under the sun. Can you talk a bit about maybe Ottawa? Because we were deployed there.
Yes.
And maybe just what your thoughts were around that and some of the stuff you saw.
Yeah. I'm probably going to make a lot of people mad with this comment, but I said when I got there, I was talking to my wife and I said, if I could videotape what I'm seeing and send it to you, like from the ground, not from the media, I'm like, it was an occupation. And I won't get into the political element of it or whether people agree or disagree with vaccinations. Right? I don't care. That's all personal opinion. They can stay with people. But when we got on the ground, we were approached by many people that lived in, especially the downtown core of Ottawa.
Yeah.
And these people were coming up to us and shaking our hands and hugging us and being like, thank you very much for getting them out of here. Like, one couple came up and they said, we couldn't leave our house. Like, I think they lived in an apartment, but they said we'd walk out and we'd get things thrown at us and people spitting at us. And they said, if you didn't openly agree with what the convoy people were saying, they would attack, it was just crazy to me. And I said, we live in Canada. That's the capital of our country. Like, that should not be allowed to happen. I don't care what your political views are. I don't care what your stance is on what was happening during COVID. Like, that cannot be allowed to happen. And what I found frustrating is we went to Ottawa, we did this. Our training actually worked very well. Like, our processes, it was kind of rough at first because we had never done anything like that, or at least not since Toronto and a long time ago. And that did not go perfectly in a lot of ways. And, you'd hear people in Edmonton for this convoy stuff being like, oh, the cops are all with the right-wing people. And I'm like, whoa. We just went to Ottawa to help, really at the end of the day, free up that city so people can live.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. But I will say this, when we were in Ottawa, the members that went there did an exceptional job. Again, the training we had done for years came to fruition and worked really well. The command structure, so obviously Ottawa took a lot of heat because they didn't do a lot off the bat. And it's funny, the same people that would call them down for that across Canada are the same people that are the reason why they were scared to act in the first place.
Yep.
But once they did act and that deputy chief took over, their command system and process was the best I've ever seen. The briefings we had, the rules of engagement we had, like just the structure which we were to act upon and within was stellar. Yeah. And I've actually said here, I'm like, if we have something here that happens and we have to have a huge deployment like that, having that process or these processes are going to be super important for our success. And of course it did. And we, some of the things that we would do, and I know that this gives away any tactics, but we would clear this occupation from an intersection, and then we would slowly do that, control that intersection, put some fencing up. And it was just a very controlled, methodical process. There wasn't running in and having to fight a bunch of people. There was a time where it was a little volatile for sure, but beyond that, slow and successful. And that was one of the better experiences I've ever had, especially in this public safety unit world, to see the majority of it being very good.
Yeah.
Like, it was, I don't think you can't buy that experience. Like,
I thought it was really good for a lot of them guys when they got there, just to see, like, there's nothing we've seen here on that scale outside of the one BLM protest that marched around downtown and then White Ave. That was certainly quite a mess to deal with, but and that was almost the same thing where if you didn't openly agree with people there, they were coming after you, and some people were throwing things from way back in the crowd. And but yeah, Ottawa was like a whole nother level, just because we were mixed in with several other police services on the line, trying to coordinate resources. I couldn't imagine just trying to get that going.
Yeah, and it's funny, as interesting as these experiences are, it's good to have, and not good. I shouldn't say good, because the way the world is right now, I wish none of these things had happened. Like, I wish George Floyd didn't happen. I wish that this Ottawa stuff, like, it didn't get to that, or none of these things had occurred. However, it's interesting to see the difference between the groups. So, like, Black Lives Matter, or Equity for All, I believe is what the actual march was called, comparative to what happened in Ottawa, like, very different reasons for it occurring. And, different groups on either side, or different spectrums, I guess, some political views and societal views. But a lot of the similarities was striking to me. I'm like, just the things that they would do, because they're people. I mean, it's humans being humans. It's not, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your viewpoint on the world is, we're still people. But Black Lives Matter, though, when we had that protest, like there was 15,000, maybe more, 16,000 people at the ledge, and certainly we stood there on the streets, and people, and this is why it's frustrating for me sometimes when people call us down. I'm like, we stood there for hours while people said they were going to kill and rape our families as they're driving by, and I'm like, people don't know that. And we had members breaking down after because we're police officers. People get mad at us all the time, but the things they were saying to us were so bad, and we didn't react to it. We didn't get mad at it. Well, I mean, people got upset, but no response. The discipline was really good, but the vast majority of that crowd was good. Like we still had people at the Black Lives Matter Equity for All, like we're still walking by us and quietly saying, "Hey, like appreciate you being here."
Yep.
Whereas in Ottawa, I guess traditionally some of the people that were in Ottawa would be the ones that were rah, rah, rah for the police, and some of the stuff they would say to us. And anyway, it was interesting experiences, again, to see the differences with the similarities. And, again, Black Lives Matter at the end, when we had that incident near the high level, that was not a big group. Like, so you talk about 16,000 people, and there's only like 50 that caused problems after.
Yeah.
Whereas in Ottawa, there was thousands of people causing problems it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
Well, and one thing that struck me the most about the difference between the whole march with the equity group and then when you look at Ottawa was how the media portrayed it. So, they just made everybody in Ottawa out to be racist, misogynists, and all kinds of stuff. When we got there and we're standing on the front line, that crowd was 50% minorities.
Yes, it was.
Because there's a lot of truck drivers.
Yep.
There were a lot of East Indian guys in there. I think the two people I saw at the front of the thing the most were Middle Eastern guys.
Yep.
But I was expecting it just to be a bunch of white people with no sleeves on their shirts and their trucker hats on. But yeah, no, it was a very mixed crowd. And it's just interesting what you see at the ground level as opposed to what the politicians tell you, as opposed to what the media spins out there. I wish we could show more of what we see on a day-to-day basis.
I agree. I think this has come up lately. Like, I actually feel bad for our police commission and some of the heat they're taking from people. And, we've had politicians and people in the city that have had very strong oppositional views to the police that then take the time to come and see what we see and do what we do. And then they realize, oh, that's not what I thought. Oh, I didn't know they deal with that. Oh, I didn't know people talk to them like that. I didn't know people, well, that's a decision they have to make in this moment. And then they also realize we're people. There's certainly police officers who make mistakes. There's certainly bad police officers in places, but it's not how it's being portrayed. And, we still have people in the city, including lawyers, that will post stuff from all over the world about police officers doing bad things. And I'm like, well, I could do that for lawyers, and I could do that for doctors, and I could do that for any profession and find you articles about people that have done bad things, like bad things. And it's a whole different topic, but that's one of the main reasons I think we're having problems getting people to do this job. Why would you want to do this job with that kind of stress on top of the stress that you have to deal with? And I mentioned this, but I've been a CISM or critical incident stress support, peer support person, I guess, for lack of a better term, for many years now. And the trauma, we talk about trauma-informed practices and we talk a lot about trauma these days. I don't disagree with it. I've worked operationally almost my whole career, and I see it all the time with people we deal with. And it's certainly, I can see how it would be a cause for a lot of the things that happen. But I know every police officer I know that has any amount of operational experience, we could sit down in a room and you talk about trauma, and you talk about the things they've seen and experienced and how it never leaves them. And, you hear comments from people, and this came up during the Equity for All Black Lives Matter protests, where people are like, well, I can't take my collar off at the end of the day. It's with me for life. And that's true. I won't ever dispute that. But their counter to that is also, well, you guys are cops. You just take your uniform off at the end of the day. It's just a job. I'm like, no, wrong.
Yeah.
The things I've seen and the things that have occurred, or the death and destruction, like that will never leave me, and it will never leave any other police officer that sees it. You don't take that off, and you don't shed that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That stays with you for the rest of your life. And that as well, I think we don't do a good enough job explaining that to people and the public, being like, we chose this job. I volunteered for this. I wasn't conscripted to be a police officer. But even I didn't realize, and I'm from a family of cops, just what I would see and experience and the effect that would have on me as I went through my life.
I would also say, like, I've never agreed with the narrative, like you're saying. But even if it is a job and you chose to do it, it still has an effect on you because, like you're saying, your whole family did it. So that's calling down everybody that came before you, saying they're all systemically racist. Yep. They're all whatever they want to call them. It's like, well, no, they're not. And where's that narrative coming from? And I don't think it's as easy as just saying, oh, one's an immutable characteristic, the other one's just a uniform. They're the same at the end of the day. Yeah. So totally agree with you. Speaking of that, so what kind of effect has any of this had on family, friends, kind of relationships outside of the job? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, to talk first about external things, like operationally external things, like I have seen a lot. So throughout my career, and this is probably the first time in my career where I've slowed that down because I'm a supervisor now, and it's a whole different purview of things that you need to do. But I always tried to be one of the first ones on scene at big events. And, for the first bit of that, I think it was to try and gain the experience, and the excitement of it was certainly as a young man. That's a big driver. But then as I went farther on in my career, it was more, I felt like I wanted to truly help, and to be at those to me was helping. But I've seen, I was in 2018, I saw that 16-year-old girl get killed in a crosswalk by a drunk driver who ended up fleeing, and they ended up following him. And, I say to a lot of people that decision for me to leave that scene, because I saw her, and I said, I opened my door and she was gone. Like I've seen a lot of death, and I was like, there's nothing I can do, but I can go get him.
Yeah.
The triple fatal that happened at the Starbucks on Gateway a couple years ago, like I watched an 18-year-old die in front of me. Like there's things like that continue to happen, that never leave you. And, I find my wife is very good and very accepting of some of the issues I've had after in dealing with that stuff. But the external things I think we have a very good support system to help deal with that. The internal processes or the internal issues that we have, and the external is in, a certain lawyer in town, certain politicians in town. I find that is a lot more difficult to deal with. I mean, you and I have talked, it's no secret, a certain lawyer in town put pictures of my family up on Twitter, and has done everything in his power to vilify me whenever he gets an opportunity. What's frustrating is I won't say the lack of control, but if I were to do that to him or anybody else, they would immediately complain and try and make my life a miserable hell for years.
Yeah.
But they're allowed to do that. And there's no consequence to it.
Yeah.
To me, that's a bully. Like you're going to do this, and there's going to be no pushback. And it's very frustrating. And that kind of stress at home has been hard to take. I don't, everybody, you can be a critique of the police. And everybody says that's their right, and it is. You can question, you can ask questions. But it seems to me that there's no, for some people, it's just a hatred of us. Like it doesn't matter what we do. They hate us. Yeah. And they don't even really they think they have an understanding, but they don't. And that again doesn't give you any platform to try and work with them to help understand. And we have a politician in town that's like that. Like I've said to guys at work, I'm like, there's almost no point on worrying about it anymore, because there's nothing you'd ever say that would allow that person to understand where we're coming from. And then in other parts of all these people's lives, they're very open and willing to talk and work with all these groups. But it's like with the police, they're like, nope, they just don't want us around.
Well, and I think for whatever reason, whether it's political motivations or maybe they've had some prior experience and they base everything on that one, example, there's no foundation from which you can even begin to agree with some people, whether it's lawyers, the politicians, media, whoever's putting out certain narratives. It's like, well, okay, if you're just going to scream and shout, like, where do we even start with that?
Yeah, and what's difficult too is that, and this is, from our gang expression days, some of the stuff, the big complaint that we've had going on, and you have people going out, like, so the police service does an investigation, they find themselves that they don't believe anything bad happened, and then certain people in the city don't like that answer, and so they decide, well, I'm going to go on to Twitter, I'm going to go on to social media, and I'm going to start vilifying these members. And I'm like, could you imagine? And we all have been to court where we didn't like the decisions that came down. Could you imagine if we then went on social media and we're like, oh, here, this guy, this accused or wasn't accused, and we start calling them down, putting pictures of their families, like
blasted the judge or somebody on there.
Not only is that not acceptable, but professionally, I would never do that. I would never even dream of that. And yet we have professionals in the criminal justice system that are doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it just blows my mind. But I came to a point this summer where I kind of just let it go. I was like, I'm not allowing, and I talked with my wife about this, like, we are not going to allow someone like that to drive how we feel.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I mean, that one person in particular actually made comments about a very popular broadcaster in town and started calling that person down. And I'm like, what kind of anger do you have inside you that you just off the cuff start attacking this guy? Like, but you know that when that happened, I was like, that just shows what kind of person he is. And it's not worth allowing them to control how I feel.
It's like when anybody yells at us on this job and they say all these things, the common one is, I make more money than you.
Yeah.
You must be mad. And they say things about your wife or whoever. And it's just like, end of the day, I just think, I don't know, I go home to a pretty good life. So I don't know what your big gripe is, but you must have it pretty bad, and you're not doing anything to fix your position, because all you do is blame everybody else for your problems.
and we've, I try and use that perspective at home, at work, and because you're right, same thing. I have a beautiful family. I have live in a nice neighborhood, nice house. Like we've worked for everything we've had, and we've had definitely hills to climb along the way. But I'm not. I go home and I'm happy. I'm not letting anybody take that away from me. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I think a lot of people don't realize that nowadays. If you work for something, people can't take that away from you.
Agreed.
So I wanted to get on just to what it's like being a sergeant now, and tell us about kind of what it's like managing a group of people in today's world, I guess.
Well,
especially knowing how much trouble you cause probably for a lot of your bosses.
So I really enjoy being a patrol sergeant. I really do. I think I would have no interest in being a promoted rank in the police service if I couldn't be directly leading people. You are correct. The things that I did in my career, and even the things I did as a teenager, they helped me as a father, and they certainly helped me as a patrol sergeant. And I find it's actually given me more patience.
Yeah.
It's allowed me to get ahead of issues and deal with those issues. It is a different culture and a different time in policing. But I think, and I've been very open about this to a lot of people, so I'm not afraid of saying it, we still have an issue developing leaders. We might develop managers, we might develop to promote, but we really need to focus more on building leaders that care about their people and all their people. And I, as a young constable, you wanted to just be surrounded by people like you. Like you wanted to be, I only wanted people around me that were going to do the same as me. Like, let's go catch bad guys. Let's go,
like you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with.
100%. Let's go to the gun calls. Let's like all that high octane stuff. And then now as a sergeant, I'm like, no, I want a variety and a mixture of the type of police officers that are in my squad. And I want different viewpoints, and I want different backgrounds. And that's what's going to make you a strong team. And I kind of had that idea going in, and then being there has solidified that in my mind. But I still have hiccups, and I actually try and make it a point. Like every 6 months, I'll sit down with everybody in the squad, and it makes them uncomfortable. But I sit there and I'm like, what am I doing, or what can I do better? And we always have these conversations going with each other. And I find in the squad, the majority of them are quite open with me.
Yeah.
And will talk with me. I'm still their sergeant, so there's obviously elements of that you have to be aware of. But I have really enjoyed it. It's a job that I work in a good division. I have really good bosses, and I've said this a couple of times. We've had some big incidents. Like it was actually our crew that was working for that random stabbing that happened in the North End.
Okay,
where the gentleman died, and then the other
just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So it was our squad and one of our sister squads. And I said after that happened, what I find in our division too is that we all work very well as a leadership team together. So you go to incidents like that and you will work together. And my staff sergeant is very good. And the other staff sergeant on that side it's an acting one, but he's very good. Like I don't feel alone with the things I have to deal with. And I can go to them and I can get their advice, or I can talk to them about things. And it makes a huge difference. And it's that team that has allowed our division to be so successful. And that was a good example of what happened when that homicide occurred is it was probably top 2 most chaotic scenes I've ever been to, just because of when it happened, where it happened, people everywhere, by virtue of how witnesses work. Like we were getting tons of calls and information.
Well, with the Saskatchewan stuff had
That's
just happened
exactly
now.
it.
Everybody's
Exactly.
really on high alert.
And so, but we were able to deal with the chaos at first, slow it down, and then we were able to successfully find the suspect. Really, you wish you would have found him right away, or you wish that you could do something to prevent what happened, because it was truly senseless. But at the same time, once it did happen, it took us less than 4 hours to find him from the start of knowing nothing about anything.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that was a team-based response, which, I couldn't imagine. I said because I wasn't even the OSM or the initial commander. I was the first supervisor on scene. But the commander was actually my sister squad, their boss. And when she showed up, we both said after, we were like, if you had to do this alone, I don't even think it would be possible. Like you would have to call other bosses in to come help you. So it's been a very fulfilling job. One of the most fulfilling jobs I've ever done in the police service.
So with that, maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff I mentioned in your bio. So you do a bit of work on the private sector side. Can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing outside of policing?
Yeah, so I started working casually a few years ago for the SIPs. And so Mark Bloxham, who taught me my first course when I was like 18, he was my sergeant in training section. So we've crossed paths throughout the years quite often. He was an ex-mall guy back in the 80s, I think. He's quite old. Anyway, I had an opportunity to go work with him to just do some casual instruction. So we do things like recertification on PPCT, so pressure point control tactics. I've done vehicle stop courses for peace officers. So all the courses I've done are for peace officers. So peace officers around the area. I've gone to Bonnyville. I've gone to Lac La Biche. I've gone to Parkland County. I did a course for all the City of Edmonton peace officers for transit, and for I think Park Rangers was another one. So one of the big things I did for him was a crowd management type course, because peace officers, for example, in Lac La Biche, I believe it was powwow days that they have up there. So they would have big events where there's like thousands of people, and they're supporting the RCMP. But in a place like Lac La Biche, they actually do most of the kind of face-to-face work with people. So I ran a course for them. For the City of Edmonton, it was just because we were having peace officers deal with crowded type issues, whether it's on the LRT transit platforms, whether it's at like some of the festivals at City Hall. I find it makes me a much better instructor in a variety of ways, because it's not police officers. They're peace officers and they do a very important task, and the vast majority of them, like us, are very, very good, but it's different. And you have to, when you teach outside, you're not teaching police officers anymore. So you have to do some research, get to know what do they do? What are they not able to do? What are they not allowed to do?
Like they don't come from a background with like so much structure and
Yes.
formality to it.
And they're doing their job without firearms. They're doing their job like they're without tasers. Like there's things they're doing that you have to tailor your training for that. And it gives you a lot of respect for especially some of the rural peace officers, like some of the things they deal with or the people they deal with that we do it too, but we do with, 3 other systems on our belt, and they don't have that.
Yeah.
So it's a really unique, it's a unique place to work. I don't do it that often. Like again, it's casual. So when it comes up, we might do it to do that. But certainly it has been, or there have been some very good experiences that have helped me grow.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. Yeah. Do you think, is there anything we missed? Anything you want to cover that we didn't talk about?
Oh, man, you had a lot of points when you gave those to me. So
yeah, I think we covered quite a bit. We certainly look to have you back once maybe another 6 months when things change. We'll see. It's coming up to winter, so hopefully there's not a ton of protests and riots going on in minus 40. But no, I appreciate you coming in today. I think it was really good. So we'll end it there.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
Great.